bigger than my truck. That's a 7-meter tyrannosaur standing on a dirt road in Alabama. And it isn't a stand-in for something from out west. That animal was named from this state, from bones dug out of Montgomery County. It's the best tyrannosaur ever found on the eastern side of North America, and almost nobody outside paleontology has heard of it. But before we get to it, one thing about Alabama that makes the rest of this list make sense. Look at a soil map of this state, and there's a dark crescent arcing right through the middle of it. People call it the Black Belt. That soil is dark and heavy and rich because it isn't really soil. It's chalk and marl, the compacted floor of a sea that covered this state 80 million years ago. The whole agricultural history of central Alabama sits on a dead ocean. And everything on this list came out of it, or out of the rock above and below it. 11 of them, every one real. Number 11. Start in a coal mine spoil pile in Walker County and start with amateurs. In the 1990s, a group of local fossil collectors, not professionals, hobbyists with hammers, started splitting the discarded rock at a mine called Union Chapel and finding footprints, not bones, tracks, 300 million years old, pressed into what had been the wet mud of a coastal swamp, and preserved in astonishing numbers. Amphibians walking with their bellies dragging, early reptiles, the trails of horseshoe crabs, the tiny stitching left by insects. It is now one of the most important Carboniferous trackway sites in the world, and it was found by people doing it on weekends in a pile of rock the mine had thrown away. Some of those slabs record an animal changing direction. You can see the moment it decided to go somewhere else. And a trackway gives you something a skeleton can't. A skeleton is an animal after it stopped. A trackway is an animal in the middle of doing something. You can measure the stride, work out how fast it was moving, see where it hesitated, see where two of them crossed and which one came through first. There are slabs from that mine showing a small amphibian coming up out of the water, walking a few meters across wet mud and going back in. 300 million years old. That's a decision. Preserved. Number 10. Now into the sea and into the chalk. Alabama's Cretaceous chalk is packed with shark teeth, and the variety is what tells the story. Not one species dominating, but dozens, layered through millions of years, from little needle-shaped teeth up to broad, serrated blades. A shark sheds thousands of teeth over a lifetime, and each one is a small, dense mineral object built to survive. So in marine rock, the tooth becomes the default fossil. What that abundance means is straightforward. The water over Alabama was warm, shallow, and so full of food that it supported an enormous predator population continuously for tens of millions of years. And those teeth are still coming out of the ground. Creek beds and road cuts across the Black Belt produce them constantly. Number 9. Something in that water was big enough not to care about most of the sharks. The giant marine turtles of the Cretaceous reached 3 to 4 meters from flipper tip to flipper tip, with a broad, leathery shell and a beak strong enough to crush shellfish, and Alabama's chalk has produced their remains for over a century, sometimes as shell fragments you'd struggle to lift alone. But here is the detail that should stop you, and it's the reason this entry is on the list, rather than being a footnote about a big animal. Almost every marine creature I'm about to describe to you died at the end of the Cretaceous. The mosasaurs went. The flying reptiles went. The great marine reptile groups were wiped off the board completely and never came back. The sea turtles did not. That lineage walked straight through the worst day in the history of complex life and kept going, essentially unchanged, and its descendants are in the Gulf of Mexico right now, a few hours south of the rock its ancestors are fossilized in. Nobody is entirely sure why turtles made it. Small size at hatching, cold tolerance, The ability to go a very long time without eating. Those are the usual candidates. Whatever the reason, out of everything swimming over Alabama, the turtle is the one that's still here. Number 8. Look up from that sea, and you'd see them. Alabama's Cretaceous deposits have produced the fragile, air-filled bones of pterosaurs, flying reptiles with wingspans of several meters, gliding on leathery membranes stretched between an enormously elongated finger and the body. Finding them here at all is remarkable, because bones that light almost never survive burial. They weren't birds, and they weren't dinosaurs. They were their own strange branch of reptile, patrolling the coastline for fish. Picture a shadow crossing the water over central Alabama, cast by something with a wingspan wider than a highway lane. Number 7. And here's what ran the water itself. Alabama's Mooreville Chalk is one of the best mosasaur-producing units in North America. These were marine reptiles, monitor lizard relatives that went back to the sea and got enormous, many over 10 meters, driven by a powerful finned tail, with jaws that hinged in the middle to open wider and a second row of teeth set into the roof of the mouth so that nothing they grabbed could back out. They are found in this state in numbers and in quality. A 15-meter reptile surfacing over what is now farmland outside Selma is not a flourish. That is what the rock says was there. Number 6. Now on to land, and to a discovery that changed a whole chapter of dinosaur history. And it happened recently. In 2016, researchers described a duck-billed dinosaur from Montgomery County, Alabama, from a skull and partial skeleton that had been sitting in a collection. Duck-bills are the most successful plant-eating dinosaurs that ever lived. They spread across the planet and turn up on nearly every continent. The assumption had always been that they got started somewhere else and arrived here later. But this animal was old, it was primitive, and it was eastern. And it made a serious case that the whole hadrosaur lineage may have originated on this side of the continent, on the island land mass that the seaway had cut off. Alabama might be where duckbills come from. Number 5. Back into the water, 40 million years ago, when the sea had come back and the Cretaceous was long gone. Alabama's Eocene rock contains whales, and the more common of the two is the one people skip past. Zygerhyza was about 5 meters long, sleek, with a long, toothed snout, a fast, capable marine predator, and, by the standards of what was in that water, the small one. It turns up constantly in the state's coastal plain, and what makes it worth your attention is that it's the control. It tells you the sea over Alabama wasn't a freak environment producing one giant. It was a functioning ecosystem with a whole size range of whales in it, the way a modern ocean has porpoises and orcas and blue whales all at once. Number 4, which brings us to the one the state actually claims. Basilosaurus is the official state fossil of Alabama, and the exposures here are among the best in the world for it. 18 meters long, longer than a semi-trailer, but built completely wrong for a whale. Not barrel-shaped, long, thin, and serpentine, with vertebrae stretched out into hollow tubes, so the whole animal reads more like an enormous eel with a wolfish head on the front of it. And that shape has consequences you can reason out from the skeleton alone. A body like that doesn't dive deep, and it doesn't sustain speed the way a modern whale does. It undulated along at or near the surface, moving mostly up and down, working the top of the water column and nothing much below it. It was, in effect, a whale restricted to a thin layer of ocean, which is probably why nothing has ever been shaped like it since. Whales after this one got shorter, thicker, and went down instead of along. Alabama's state fossil is a design that got tried once at enormous size and then abandoned. Number 3, and the sea kept producing, Megalodon teeth come out of Alabama's coastal plain constantly. Broad, thick, serrated triangles that can span an adult palm. The largest shark that has ever existed. Somewhere between 15 and 18 meters, heavier and blockier than anything alive, with a jaw a person can stand inside. What those teeth tell you about this specific water is what it was eating. Not fish. Whales. And Alabama's rock has both halves of that equation in it, the shark and the whales, in the same coastal plain, sometimes in the same formations. The predator and the prey are both under the peanut fields. Number 2. Now to the animal this region has the strongest claim on, and it's a crocodile. Deinosuchus reached 10 meters and several tons, with a broad, heavy snout, thick, bony armor down the back, and a skull that on its own runs longer than a person is tall. Its bite has been estimated in the range that rivals a tyrannosaur's. Alabama's Blufftown Formation is one of the core places this animal is known from. This is not a species that wandered through. This is home range. It cruised the warm coastal rivers and estuaries along the edge of that vanished sea. And it wasn't eating fish. Duck-billed dinosaur bone from these deposits carries deep puncture marks that match its teeth, and some of those wounds show signs of healing, which means the dinosaur got hit, got away, and lived long enough for the bone to grow back over the hole. Hold that next to number 6 for a second. Alabama has the duckbills, and Alabama has the thing that was biting them. And number 1, Appalachiosaurus. 7 meters long, deep, narrow skull, powerful hind legs, the short, heavy build of the tyrannosaur family, and it was named from Montgomery County, Alabama, in 2005. That specimen is the best tyrannosaur ever recovered from the eastern half of North America. And the reason it matters is geography. For most of the late Cretaceous, a shallow seaway split this continent in two. The famous tyrannosaurs are all from the western landmass. Everything on the eastern side was cut off, its own island, with its own animals, evolving separately for millions of years. Appalachiosaurus is what the tyrannosaur family did over here, alone. It's smaller and more lightly built than its western cousins, with proportionally longer legs, and it was the apex predator of a place that no longer exists as a place. And that isolation is the part worth sitting with. Put a population on an island and cut it off, and it stops looking like its relatives. It gets bigger or smaller. It specializes. It goes its own way. That happened here to an entire continent's worth of animals for millions of years. Everything on the eastern side of that seaway was running its own separate experiment. The duckbill at number 6 and this animal are two results of the same experiment, and Alabama has both of them, which is why paleontologists care about this state far more than the public does. So when you look at that thumbnail, a tyrannosaur standing on a red dirt road at night with pines on both sides and a porch light on, that is not a borrowed image. That animal's type specimen came out of the ground about an hour from there. So that's Alabama. Footprints in a mine spoil pile, a sea full of sharks and turtles and 15-meter reptiles, a duckbill that might be where all duckbills started, a state fossil shaped like nothing before or since, a crocodile that hunted dinosaurs, and the best tyrannosaur east of the Mississippi. All of it under a dark crescent of soil that is really the floor of a dead ocean. If you live in the Black Belt, the reason your dirt is that color is the animals on this list. Tell me below which county you're in. I'll tell you what was swimming over it.